That's a very good problem. Okay. You very much. So now we are recording. And I have a problem. Okay, so let's see. Maybe now we will hold on. So all the kings are gathering against Joshua in Israel, but we have an interesting story on verse 3, I'm sorry. But when the inhabitants of Gibeon learned how Joshua had treated Jericho and Ai, they, for their part, resorted to cunning. They set out in disguise. They took worn out sacks for their donkeys and worn out water skins that were cracked and patched. They had worn out patched sandals on their feet and threadbare clothes on their bodies, and all the bread they took as provision was dry and crumbly. And so they went to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal, and in a parley said to him and to the rest of Israel's side, "We come from a distant land. We propose that you make a pact with us." Okay, interesting, very creative thinking on their behalf. They are seeing what's happening to the other nations. They don't want to be wiped out like that. And they say, let's do a trick here. Let's try and convince the Israelites that we came from far away and we want to make a pact with them. Why do they have to do that?
They don't want to be attacked.
Okay, but they could also say, hi, we're your neighbors. We don't, we want to make a pact with you.
Well, the Israelis or the Israelites haven't exactly shown that they're friendly. I mean, they destroyed everything that there was to
They're
destroy.
coming from Ai and Jericho.
Yeah.
The word gets around.
The word gets around.
Okay, the word gets around. And also, there is a commandment in the Bible for the Israelites not to make peace with the local inhabitants. They are supposed to take over the land and draw out all the inhabitants of the land. So maybe they heard about that. That was, kind of like the theme that they understood of what's going on here. And they said, we don't want to be, we don't want to have the same fate as the other nations. But the only way we'll be saved is if we pretend we come from afar. Okay, so because you know, uh, because they know that if they are local inhabitants of the land, they are doomed. So, first of all, something very interesting, just on the as a side note, they go all the way to the Gilgal. Okay, the Gilgal is back at Jericho. Okay, wait, weren't we here just a few verses ago? Right? Weren't we here at Shechem? And now we're going back to the Gilgal. So this is part of the reason some of the scholars said there might be a problem with the story on Mount Ebal. But again, as Larry noted before, sometimes the stories in the Bible don't always align chronologically. They're put in different places. So that might be the reason for that. But it is a clear, unless we assume that after Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, all the people of Israel moved back to Gilgal, which also is kind of like hard to imagine that they did this, again, this whole big trip. So they come in a very interesting way, being disguised. They want to be very, very convincing when they get to Joshua's camp, and they say, we want to create a pact. And Israel's side replied to the Hivites, because the Gibeonites are from the nation of the Hivites, okay? But perhaps you live among us. How then can we make a pact with you? So they're telling them, okay, sorry, you seem like nice people, but we have to, draw you out of here and kill you all. So, we can't have a pact with you.
Sorry.
Okay.
It sounds like Putin.
Yeah. There's like, we wish we could, but
But
we're
can't.
commanded not to.
And we're
Okay.
not going to anyway.
So they said to Joshua, okay, we will be your subjects. But Joshua asked them, who are you and where do you come from? He's asking them an honest question. It is, I mean, today we're used to, leaders and politicians saying things that we don't, they say words and we don't believe a word they say, okay? In the Bible, when you say something, okay, it means like your word has real weight and you have to follow your word. Okay, it's like there has to be a very, very good reason. It has to be explained if you don't follow your word. So they are lying in that sense because they replied, your servants have come from a very distant country because of the fame of the eternal your God, for we heard the report of all that your God did in Egypt and all that your God did to the two Amorite kings on the other side of the Jordan, King Sichon of Heshbon and King Og of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth. So our elders and all the inhabitants of our country instructed us as follows: take along provisions for a trip and go to them and say, we will be your subjects, come make a pact with us. This bread of ours, which we took from our houses as provision, was still hot when we set out to come to you, and see how dry and crumbly it has become. They're like crumbling the breadcrumbs. Okay, you don't want to eat this, it's not fresh. These wineskins were new when we filled them, and see how they have cracked. These clothes and sandals of ours are worn out from the very long journey. So they're really, they're good actors, right? Those involved took their word for it because of their provisions and did not inquire of God. Okay, so instead of kind of like now they were supposed to maybe consult with God, maybe through the priests and through other ways, but they decided not to consult with God if this is true or not. So they were just convinced, and Joshua established friendship with them. He made a pact with them to spare their lives, and the chieftains of the community gave them their oath. So they all stood, they did a ceremony, they made their oath. We're not going to hurt you, you're not going to hurt us. And they have a pact as long as they agree to be the subjects of the Israelites. But by the way, okay, if you look at the context of the story, the way the story began on verse 1 is that all the kings west of Jordan, all of them, okay, gathered with one accord to fight against Joshua and Israel. They probably also sent letters to the Gibeonites, and they probably told the Gibeonites, come join us to war against the Israelites. The Israelites are here, they're close to you, okay? And they're going to get all of us. So if we all unite against the Israelites, we can prevail. And the Gibeonites decided to move away from that group and go take a different path. So taking that different path, they get credit for that. They realized, first of all, they realized that geopolitics, that the Israelites are there to win, but they also understood deep inside that the God of Israel, is with the Israelites. And this is why they are prevailing. These are the reasons they are using to convince Joshua to create a pact with them. So they're smart on all these levels, okay? And then what happens when you tell a lie? It's always one day someone's gonna find out about it. Here, it only took 3 days to find out about the lie, okay? Verse 16, but when 3 days had passed after they made this pact with them, they learned that they were neighbors living among them. Lo and behold, these people, they lied to us. They didn't just lie to us, they made this whole act and pretended, and their dry bread and the clothes and the cracked, bottles of wine. It's like, what's going on? The Israelites are furious. And how do we know they're furious? Because on verse 17, it says, so the Israelites set out, and on the third day they came to their towns. These towns were Gibeon, Chafira, Beerot, and Kiryat Yearim. Okay? The Israelites came to tell them, oh, you did a great prank on us, or did they come to exterminate them? Okay, here are their cities. Okay, right here, Geba, this area right near Jerusalem. This is where the Gibeonites are. Okay, Gibeah. Okay, Geba, and it's not far from Gilgal, but it's like on the other side. You have to cross a few mountains here, and it's in the area of Jerusalem, a little bit west of Jerusalem, also west east. I'm sorry, east of Jerusalem, not west. So what happens when they get to their cities on verse 18? But the Israelites did not attack them, since the chieftains of the community had sworn to them by the Eternal, the God of Israel. The whole community muttered against the chieftains. But all the chieftains answered the whole community, we swore to them by the Eternal, the God of Israel, therefore we cannot touch them. Interesting, okay? They lied to us, but we made a pact with them. The pact overrides their lie, and the pact doesn't just override the lie. It also rides God's commandment from the Bible, from the Torah, to alienate all the other nations. There's a commandment in the Torah to draw out all the nations, all the nations, the inhabitants of the land, to draw them out of the land of Israel. That even overrides that God's commandment, the pact that they did. That's a very interesting phenomenon. We hear that the Torah is evolving. The Torah can, things can be different than what is commanded in the Torah if there is a new situation happening. Okay, do you understand the implication of this? It's a very strong message in that sense, that the leaders of the community at that time can decide to override a law in the Torah for a certain situation that's happening right here and now, which is the pact that they did with the Gibeonites. Because they could have easily said, well, we made this pact, but we didn't know you were lying, and we didn't know we would be going against a commandment in the Torah, therefore a pact with you is void. That would have been the easiest thing to do, probably the things that makes more sense. What?
That's what I do.
Right?
You like me, you're out of here.
Exactly, right?
Well,
But no, there's something like stronger than that, and that's like pact. The pact has a religious significance, a mystical significance in that sense. It can never be broken in that sense.
If you go forward though, when David was king, he wouldn't have hesitated.
David had his issue with the Gibeonites, but they
Yeah.
went out against him as well. We're gonna, when we get to the book of Samuel, that's a good point. Are you referring to that story, the
Mhm.
Gibeonites? So we're gonna read more about that then, but that's a good point. So now we are at verse 20.
But not all is lost.
Not all those. Actually, we're gonna
Stop it.
we're gonna stop here because our time is up, and we're gonna write that we stop here. Okay, so we don't forget in 2 weeks from now, right? And then we will continue in 2 weeks. And thank you everyone for attending.